Across the globe, a multi-billion-dollar trade in black market oil is hiding in plain sight. It moves through a massive network of decaying aging tankers known as the dark fleet. These vessels use a mix of signal spoofing and disguises to bypass international law and deliver oils from sanctioned nations, mainly Iran, Venezuela, and Russia. Today, roughly 10% of the world's oil, about 1.5 billion barrels every year, is moving through this shadow system. To understand the scale of this deception, we have to look at the core of the operation. This is a four-phase process designed to make oil untraceable. It begins with Phase 1, acquisition. Among the dark fleet, tankers are often 15 to 20 years old. They are vessels that were supposed to be sent to the scrapyard and turned into metal. These ships are cheap, and because they are old, the owner do not care if they are seized or damaged. But who actually buys these ships? This is where shell companies come in. A dark fleet tanker is never owned by a government directly. It is owned by a company in Dubai, which is owned by a company in the Seychelles, which is owned by a trust in the Marshall Islands. It's a Russian nesting doll of paperwork. Regulators looking for the true owners usually end up in a maze of fake names and PO boxes. By the time they actually pin someone down, the ship has already been sold to another shell company and renamed. This leads us to Phase 2, digital and legal cloaking. In the modern world, every large ship is required to have a digital footprint. This is done through the Automatic Identification System, or AIS. Think of it as a GPS for the ocean that tells other ships and Coast Guard exactly who you are, where you are, and how fast you are going. For a legitimate ship, turning this off is a major safety violation. However, dark fleet ships use AIS spoofing. They use sophisticated software to send out a fake location signal. A digital map might show a ship sitting calmly at anchor in the Mediterranean Sea, while in reality, it is 2,000 miles away loading millions of barrels of crude oil. Some ships have been caught spoofing their signals, so they appear to be in two places at once, or broadcasting the identity of a ship that was scrapped years ago. Beyond AIS spoofing, there is flag hopping. Every ship must be registered to a country, and it flies that country's flag. Legitimate ships use stable, well-regulated flags like Singapore, Norway, or Greece. Dark fleet ships do the opposite. They search for countries that have very little oversight and don't ask many questions. A ship might enter a dark zone as the ocean trader flying a Panama flag, and exit 2 weeks later as the Red Star flying the flag of the Cook Islands. By the time a regulator checks the old name, the ship legally no longer exists. This constant swapping of names and nationalities makes it nearly impossible for automated checking software to keep a consistent file on these vessels. Once the ship is loaded and its identity is hidden, it moves to Phase 3, the mid-ocean shuffle. This is the most critical part of the process, known as ship-to-ship transfer. Moving millions of gallons of oil from one moving ship to another in the middle of the ocean is incredibly dangerous, but it is the ultimate way to clean the oil. The dark fleet operators choose gray zones for these transfers, places in international waters where no single country has the power to stop them. Common spots include the Niconian Gulf off the coast of Greece, the Malacca Strait near Malaysia, or the waters near the United Arab Emirates. The two massive tankers pull alongside each other. They use massive hoses and giant rubber fenders to stay stable while the oil is pumped over. After the ship-to-ship transfer, the neutral ship issues a new bill of lading. This new document lists the port of loading as the specific coordinates in the ocean or a transfer zone. When the neutral ship arrives at its final destination, the captain can truthfully show a document saying the oil was loaded in the middle of the sea. The paperwork is reset. The oil is no longer Russian or Iranian. It is now just a cargo that came from another ship. This process allows the oil to bypass the strict insurance and shipping rules set by Western countries, because the ship delivering the oil to the final buyer appears to be clean. However, even a mid-ocean transfer isn't always enough to fool the experts. Some labs can test oil and tell exactly where it came from based on its chemical makeup. This leads to Phase 4, chemical rebranding, also known as the blend. The sanctioned oil is taken to massive storage hubs, often in Singapore or the Middle East. There, it is mixed with legitimate non-sanctioned oil from other countries. By stirring different types of crude together in giant tanks, the chemical fingerprint of the sanctioned oil is hidden. Once the blending is finished, the oil is issued a brand new certificate of origin. It is no longer labeled as Russian Urals. It is now sold as Malaysian blend or Middle Eastern crude. At this point, the oil is legally clean. It can be sold to any refinery in the world, and most banks will process the payment without a second thought. The transformation is complete. What started as an illegal cargo has been washed through so many layers of deception that it is now a standard legal commodity. Now we have to ask, who is actually buying this oil? The primary reason the dark fleet exists is that sanctioned oil is sold at a massive discount. Because it is considered risky, Russia and Iran often sell their oil for $10 to $30 less than the global market price. China is the biggest buyer. Specifically, a group of independent refineries known as teapots. These are not the massive state-owned companies, they are smaller private businesses. Because they don't do business in the United States and don't use the US dollar, they are not afraid of American sanctions. They buy discounted ghost oil to fuel China's massive industrial machine, saving billions of dollars in the process. In fact, China purchases around 90% of Iranian crude oil. India is another major player. India has become a massive processing hub. They buy discounted Russian crude, refine it into diesel or gasoline in their own plants, and then export that clean fuel back to Europe and America. It is a massive irony. The West bans Russian oil, but they end up buying the same oil back from India at a higher price. Furthermore, these trades are increasingly being paid in yuan or dirhams, which helps this nation bypass the Western banking system entirely. But this secret economy comes with a terrifying cost: the environmental time bomb. In the legitimate shipping world, every tanker is required to have P&I insurance. This is a billion-dollar insurance policy that pays for the cleanup if there is an oil spill. Dark fleet ships do not have this. Their insurance is often fake or state-backed by the sanctioned nation, meaning it might not actually exist in a crisis. These ships are also in a state of structural decay. It is important to note that these are 20-year-old vessels that were supposed to be scrapped. They are rusty, their engines are overworked, and they do not undergo safety inspections. They are being pushed to their limits to avoid detection, often sailing through narrow and dangerous straits like the English Channel or the Malacca Strait with unqualified crews. If a dark fleet tankers cracked in half, there would be no corporate owners to sue. The shell company in Dubai will disappear overnight. There will be no insurance money for the cleanup. The cost, both financial and environmental, will fall entirely on the local people and the ocean. We are essentially watching a fleet of unmanaged floating bombs travel across the world's most sensitive waters every single day. This brings us to the final question: why can't the West stop it? The US and its allies have tried. They use high-tech satellite tracking and synthetic aperture radar that can see through clouds and at night to find ships that have turned off their signals. They have blacklisted hundreds of specific ships by their IMO numbers, a permanent ID that stays with a ship forever. However, as soon as one ship is sanctioned, it is sold to a new shell company with a new name and flag within 24 hours. The system is too decentralized to kill. But there is a deeper, more cynical reason why the West hasn't truly destroyed the Dark Fleet. If the United States actually succeeded in stopping every single Dark Fleet ship tomorrow, 4 million barrels of oil would suddenly vanish from the global market. The law of supply and demand would take over. Oil prices would skyrocket, potentially hitting $150 or $200 a barrel. Gas prices at your local station would double. This would cause a political disaster for Western leaders. The uncomfortable truth is that the West needs the oil to flow to keep prices stable. even if they have to pretend it isn't happening. They want to punish Russia and Iran, but they don't want to crash the world economy to do it. Thank you for watching.